That was terrific. Thank you so much, Secretary Rice. That was a very compelling and thoughtful speech. The Secretary's agreed to take 3 questions. Where is the first one? Over here?
Madam Secretary, Russia is a petrostate, and its level of assertiveness pretty much correlates to the price of oil. The price of oil is down by 30 or 40%, and the oil markets look like they're going to get softer. Would you expect Russian behavior to be at all modified because of the price of oil and its importance to their economy?
Well, I don't know if their behavior will be modified. I do know that there are significant vulnerabilities for petrostates that do not diversify. And there are significant vulnerabilities for petrostates that depend on their ability to engage in monopolistic behavior during good times. When the price of oil is down and that monopolistic behavior doesn't pay off in terms of customers. So those are facts that I understand and realities that I understand that are independent of Russia in particular. I will say that there had been a time when Russia talked a lot about the diversification of its economy because of its this period of oil boom. But again, half in and half out. It's difficult to diversify your economy if rule of law and transparency and predictability of contracts is not available. And so whatever the future of the price of oil may portend, I think that the problems in the Russian economy are ones that are there structurally, and they will, of course, be more vulnerable or made worse when commodity prices are as they are headed south. But there are just certain structural problems with being a petrol economy, and if you look at places that have handled it well, for instance, like Norway, they've taken very different course, and of course, as a democratic state, have had to take a different course.
Next question. Over there.
Yes.
German Marshall Fund. About the G8, I just wondered what you're thinking as a G8 now. Is it time perhaps to reinvent it, to make it larger? And how do you see Russia's role now in the G8?
Well, I think that Russia has called into question whether it shares the goals and the aspirations of many of these institutions. And what has happened thus far, first of all, there's never been a G8 finance ministers, and so the G7 finance ministers have been the ones that have been working on the Georgia package and so forth. We've also met at the level of G7 foreign ministers, meeting telephonically a couple of times, because issuing one statement that said that it was unusual for G7 foreign ministers to criticize the behavior of a member of the G8. So there is a lot of activity that has taken place outside the context of the G8 and more in the context of the G7. I think that we will have to see. The jury is still out on a couple of elements about Russia, and I hope that Russia will, frankly, stop digging the hole that it has dug. By recognizing Abkhazia and South Ossetia. One of the things that Russia could do to show that it understands that a different course is necessary would be not to try to alter the status quo in Abkhazia and South Ossetia. So no permanent military bases. Don't start exploring for resources in territory that is clearly within the international boundaries of a member state of the United Nations. I think these are the kinds of issues that people are going to be looking at. Is Russia going to block the entry of observers and monitors into Abkhazia and South Ossetia itself? Is Russia going to actually withdraw its forces fully and go back to the status quo ante? So there's a lot to still look at here, but I think that the last couple of months have clearly, or the last month or so, has clearly cast a pall on the question of Russian engagement with the diplomatic and economic and security institutions that were built on certain premises about what kind of engagement and interaction Russia wished to have with the world.
Final question. Okay, way over there.
Federica Bindi, I'm a visiting fellow at the Brookings Institution. Thank you for an excellent speech. There are three things I would like you to elaborate, if you can. First, you didn't talk about unintended consequences of the strained relationship with Russia. You mentioned the cooperation on terrorism and non-proliferation. But what if they don't collaborate? That would be a major setback for everybody. The second point is, don't you think that we as Western democracies have somehow lost our moral force in invading Iraq, and now we have a difficulty at making Russians understand that invading is not such a good thing, and you're breaking international law. Thank you very much.
Yes. Well, let me, on the first question of the consequences, look, I think we still have an interest in cooperation on terrorism, and I think Russia still has an interest. Russia, given its problems with extremism on its periphery, has always understood that it had an interest in cooperating on terrorism. I might note, too, that separatism and terrorism in some of that area around the south of Russia, the southern flank, go somewhat hand in hand. And so the recent moves by Russia, I think, have consequences also for the way that those regions will develop. And we will continue to do what we do with every state, which is to share information, to share whatever intelligence we have, because none of us have an interest in another terrorist attack, and I expect that to continue. If you remember, the United States was probably the most supportive country in the world with Russia after Beslan. And I don't think that is going to stop. And I think if there are those out there who would wish to exploit what they see as tensions in U.S.-Russian relations, they shouldn't do it, because the common fight against terrorism is one that I expect to continue. As to Iraq, I think we have to be very clear here. Saddam Hussein was an international outlaw by numerous Security Council resolutions which Russia itself had voted for, including the last resolution 1441, which called for consequences should the Iraqis not carry through on the demands of that resolution. This was a state that had attacked its neighbors, used weapons of mass destruction both against its own people and against its neighbors. It was a state that had started two major wars, and that frankly was an outlaw state, and it was a brutal state to its own people. What the United States and the coalition of states that liberated Iraq did was to give the Iraqi people an opportunity to build a new and decent kind of society. Now, to be sure, it has been harder than any of us might have dreamed. But if you look at where Iraq is today, re-emerging as a strong Arab state in the center of the Middle East, but a multi-ethnic democratic state with a functioning parliament, with a functioning government, whose neighbors are recognizing that and going back in important numbers from places like UAE and Bahrain and Jordan to reestablish embassies there. If you look at an Iraq that will not seek weapons of mass destruction like the Saddam Hussein regime, that will live in peace and security with its neighbors, and that will give its own people a chance for democratic governance, I don't think that bears any resemblance to invading a small democratic neighbor whose only crime, apparently, was that it wished to be a part of the emerging transatlantic world. And so I just don't think that there is any comparison, and we shouldn't allow the Russians to make such an argument. I can take one.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Let me thank all of you for your attendance. I need to ask you to remain seated for the next few minutes so the Secretary can depart the hotel. But I just want to say once again that that was really a very special occasion, and we're very grateful.
Thank you.